Jung-hyuk's body goes limp in Se-ri's arms, the gunshot wound finally taking its toll. Panic floods Se-ri's chest as she feels his weight shift, her heart racing. She shakes him, desperate for him to wake up, but it's no use. Kwangbum, still struggling from his own injuries, limps over to them. Se-ri's eyes are wild with fear as she demands the car keys from him, her voice trembling with urgency. "I'm the only one who can drive," she insists, her mind racing with only one thought, getting Jung-hyuk the help he needs. Without hesitation, she jumps into the driver's seat and slams her foot on the accelerator. The tires screech as she speeds down the road, the urgency of the situation weighing heavily on her. Her hands are shaking as she grips the wheel, and her voice cracks when she turns to Kwangbum. "Is there a hospital nearby?" she asks, her fear evident in every word. The silence that follows is thick with tension, the only sound the roar of the engine as she races toward whatever hope lies ahead. Kwangbum, still grimacing from his own pain, urges Se-ri to head straight for the airport, hoping to get her out of danger. But Se-ri refuses, her resolve hardening. She can't risk Jung-hyuk's life, no matter what. The weight of the situation settles on her shoulders, and there's no turning back. As they speed forward, they suddenly hit a roadblock, and Se-ri's eyes narrow with determination. Without a second thought, she looks ahead, fire burning in her gaze. "Do you know what my favorite movie is?" she asks, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Mad Max, Fury Road." Before Kwangbum can react, she slams her foot on the gas, plowing straight through the roadblock signs without hesitation. They tear down the road, and moments later, they screech into the parking lot of Sariwo Hospital. The nurse at the desk immediately assesses the situation and tells them that they need blood for a transfusion, and they need it fast. When the nurse asks for his blood type, Se-ri's heart skips a beat, and without thinking, she steps forward and volunteers. Kwangbum, his voice tinged with concern, tries to stop her. "If you don't go now, you won't be able to go back," he warns, but Se-ri doesn't hesitate. She looks at him with fierce determination, knowing this is the only way to save the man she cares about. Her decision is final. At the airport, the track team's coach grows increasingly concerned as Se-ri's absence becomes more apparent. "She's not coming, they've been waiting, but there's no sign of her." Little do they know, Se-ri is far from the airport, sitting in a hospital bed, donating blood to save Jung-hyuk's life. As the time ticks by, the team has no choice but to board the plane without her. The coach reluctantly waves them on, and the team is left in her absence. From the sidelines, Seung-joon and CEO Jeon watch the team depart. Seung-joon's mind is racing with worry, questioning how Chul-kang managed to prevent Se-ri from going. The unease in his eyes betrays the concern he feels for her safety, and he can't help but wonder what's really going on behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Chul-kang, ever the strategist, is already one step ahead. He's heard the news about his men being shot down and is immediately on alert. When he learns that the gunman was a sharpshooter, his thoughts turn to Jung-hyuk. The pieces start falling into place, and Chul-kang's suspicion grows stronger. He orders one of his soldiers to retrieve the Company 5's firearm logbook, certain that this information will lead him to the answers he's looking for. The tension continues to build, and Chul-kang's plans are about to take an even darker turn. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, the doctors have all the blood they need, and Jung-hyuk is rushed into surgery. His fate now lies in their hands. Before Kwangbum goes to get treated himself, he quietly hands Se-ri a bag containing Jung-hyuk's personal belongings. As she opens it, her heart tightens when she finds his broken cell phone and blood-spattered uniform. But it's the last item that catches her off guard, her passport picture. It's been kept with care, tucked in the bag as if Jung-hyuk had never forgotten about her, despite his refusal to take a picture together. A wave of emotion washes over Se-ri as she stares at the picture. She silently cries, touched by the small but meaningful gesture, realizing just how deeply Jung-hyuk had kept her close, even when they both kept their distance. Later, when Jung-hyuk is wheeled out of the operating room, alive and breathing, Se-ri's tears shift from sadness to relief, her face lighting up with a mixture of joy and gratitude. The surgeon informs them that, despite the severity of the injury, they managed to avoid damaging any major arteries. The weight of the news settles in her chest, and for the first time in a long while, she allows herself to believe that things might be okay. That evening, as the hospital room grows quiet and the lights dim, Se-ri sits by Jung-hyuk's bedside, watching him sleep peacefully. Her thoughts are a whirlwind, and she softly whispers to him, her voice barely above a whisper. For so long, I only loved and hated myself, protected and abandoned myself, she says, her words raw and vulnerable. I'm not used to having someone else by my side. And now, I'm scared that something might happen to you. She pauses, her voice thick with emotion, as she wonders aloud, does this mean you've become a special person to me? Her words hang in the air, unanswered, but in her heart, she knows the truth. Jung-hyuk has already become someone irreplaceable, someone who has quietly and deeply etched himself into her life. As Jung-hyuk drifts into sleep, he is pulled into a dream, a memory that feels distant yet painfully vivid. It takes him back to Switzerland, a time after he had learned of his brother's death. His heart still heavy with grief, he was preparing to return to North Korea, the weight of his responsibilities weighing down on him. But then, a little girl approached him on the dock, her eyes full of curiosity. She pointed to the piano sitting by the water, a small, delicate thing that seemed out of place in such a setting, and asked if he could play something for her. With a soft smile, Jung-hyuk agreed, his heart heavy with the quiet sorrow of the moment. This will be my last time playing, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. As his fingers touched the keys, the melody that flowed from the piano was gentle and sweet, yet sad, a song he had written for his brother. The notes echoed off the still water, a beautiful, haunting sound that seemed to carry his grief across the lake. The little girl smiled as she listened, enchanted by the music, and soon, other passers-by stopped to watch, drawn in by the sorrow and beauty of the song. But as the dream continues, it fades, and Jung-hyuk wakes up with a start. His eyes dart around the room, and his heart races as he realizes where he is. He's back in the hospital, and Se-ri is sitting by his bedside. The shock and confusion in his eyes are clear, but so is the frustration that rises within him. Se-ri, seeing that he is awake, moves to help him sit up, but Jung-hyuk reacts harshly, shoving her arm away. His voice is cold, filled with an edge that stings. Why did you miss your flight? He demands, his words sharp and accusing. Taken aback by his sudden hostility, Se-ri falters, trying to process the sudden shift in his demeanor. She meets his gaze, her voice softer than usual. I couldn't go, she says quietly, a sense of helplessness creeping in. Jung-hyuk's frustration grows, and his anger spills out as he scolds her. We risked our lives to get you out of the country, he snaps, his eyes burning with a mix of anger and disappointment. And you let all of our efforts go to waste. His words feel like a slap, each one carrying the weight of their sacrifices. Se-ri, stunned by his sudden coldness, can only watch as Jeong-hyeok continues. His next words are laced with bitterness. How much more do you have to trouble us until you feel sorry? He demands, the hurt in his tone cutting deeper than she expects. Her heart tightens, the weight of his words sinking in as she tries to understand the storm of emotions he's grappling with. The distance between them feels vast now, and she can only wonder how much of his anger is rooted in the pain he's holding inside. Se-ri, her eyes heavy with a mixture of hurt and concern, quickly averts her gaze as Jeong-hyeok's harsh words linger in the air. She tries to swallow the knot of emotion rising in her throat, but instead, she quietly says, your anesthesia probably hasn't worn off yet. The words are gentle, almost soothing in an attempt to ease the tension between them. I should leave you to rest, she adds, her voice barely above a whisper. You can be angry with me later. Without waiting for a response, Se-ri hurries out of the room, her footsteps quick and measured as she heads toward the nurse's station. She informs the nurse that Jeong-hyeok is conscious, her tone steady despite the turmoil in her chest. Inside the room, the nurse and doctor begin to fill Jeong-hyeok in on his condition, their voices light-hearted. They tease him, giggling about how his girlfriend was so worried about him, and they mention how Se-ri gave blood for him, nearly fainting from crying the whole time. The casual, almost teasing nature of their conversation cuts through the coldness in Jeong-hyeok's heart, and for the first time, his hard expression softens. The realization hits him, Se-ri, the woman he's been pushing away, was there for him in ways he hadn't fully understood. She cared enough to risk her own well-being, to sacrifice for him. A wave of guilt washes over him as he processes everything. His anger dissipates, replaced by a deep, almost overwhelming need to make things right. He gets out of bed and moves to find Se-ri. It doesn't take long for him to spot her outside, standing in the rain, her back to him as she gazes at the falling droplets. Her shoulders shake slightly, her body language full of defeat. He watches her for a moment, her quiet sobs drifting on the breeze. Se-ri whispers to herself, her words barely audible, I just want to drive away somewhere. The image of her standing there, vulnerable and lost, strikes him with a sense of longing he didn't realize was there. The anger that had clouded his thoughts melts away completely, and all that's left is the overwhelming desire to be there for her, just as she had been for him. When she turns and sees him, the worry in her eyes is clear. Her heart races, and without thinking, she calls him crazy for walking around when he's clearly hurt. But instead of getting defensive, he simply looks at her, noticing the tear-streaked pain on her face. His voice softens, and he apologizes for being so harsh earlier, his words tinged with regret. I didn't mean any of it, he says quietly, his eyes filled with sorrow. She takes a deep breath, her emotions tangled, and accepts his apology, but her voice shakes as she tells him that, above all, his being alive is the most important thing to her. He looks at her with a mixture of guilt and longing, still feeling the weight of their recent struggle. He can't help but mention how badly she wanted to go home, as if he had failed her in some way. Her tears return, but this time they come with a quiet determination. I told you, I couldn't, she whispers, her voice breaking. For once, I had to protect you too. It's a truth she's carried with her, the sacrifice she made to keep him safe, and though it hurts, she knows she did what she had to do. He keeps looking at her with those intense eyes, and she finally points it out. "Why do you keep staring at me like that?" she asks. He just smiles softly and replies, "I'm just looking." She opens her mouth to argue, but before she can, he leans in and kisses her gently. He pulls back, locking eyes with her, and without saying a word, kisses her again, this time a little deeper, as if trying to say everything without speaking. Meanwhile, Chul Kang is now convinced that Jeong-hyeok is the gunman after reviewing the firearm logbook. With a sinking feeling, he becomes sure that Jeong-hyeok must be injured. He orders everyone on the switchboard to contact the hospitals in the area, desperately trying to find any sign of him. At the same time, Seung-joon is trying to reach Jeong-hyeok as well, but his calls go unanswered. Just then, CEO Jeon arrives, having spoken to Chul Kang, and tells Seung-joon that Chul Kang has no idea where Se-ri is either. The news only adds to the growing tension. At the mention of Chul Kang's planned accident, Seung-joon's entire demeanor shifts. His voice sharpens, disbelief in his eyes. "Are you saying you don't mind killing Se-ri?" he asks, stunned. CEO Jeon responds casually, "Yes," as if it's no big deal, which only serves to fuel Seung-joon's anger. Amused, Jeon smirks and adds, "You must be busy playing the conman while pretending to act human, clearly enjoying the discomfort he's causing." The next day, the village wives stop their work when they see Dan and her mother approaching. Still firmly on Se-ri's side, Dan's mom doesn't help the situation, quickly irritating the group in worse way and bluntly asking for apartment. The tension between them rises immediately. It's only when Young-ae steps forward and reveals herself as Jeong-hyuk's boss that Dan's mom straightens up, suddenly realizing her mistake. She quickly switches to formal speech, trying to smooth things over. To make up for her earlier rudeness, she hands each of the ladies a new box of makeup, and their faces light up with delight. The shift is instant. Now, the women are all smiles, acting overly polite, and eager to show Dan and her mom the apartments. However, the apartments are nothing like what Dan expected. The elevator breaks down halfway, and the room's fridge is filled with random items, used more as a closet than for food storage, thanks to the constant power outages. To top it off, there are farm animals kept in the bathroom and on the balcony. Dan, overwhelmed and frustrated, quietly excuses herself from the tour. She heads straight to Jeong-hyuk's house, hoping for a bit of peace and comfort. Before knocking, Dan balances a hand mirror on the gate, carefully testing to see if her hair looks better in an updo. She's lost in the reflection when Seung-joon suddenly shows up, causing her to jump in surprise. He looks at her, a little confused, and asks, "Why are you here again?" Dan hesitates for a moment before answering, "Jeong-hyuk is my fiancé." The words hang in the air, and Seung-joon's surprise is evident. After a pause, he vaguely says, "I know Jeong-hyuk too." The mention of Jeong-hyuk's name makes the situation feel even more complicated. Since they're both looking for him, Seung-joon suggests they wait in his car. As they start walking, he casually throws out, "You look pretty with your hair down." Dan blushes, embarrassed, and quickly hides the mirror as she walks past him toward the car. Back at the hospital, the nurse keeps noticing how flushed Jeong-hyuk looks despite not having a fever. She asks him curiously if he saw something he wasn't meant to see. Jeong-hyuk's reaction is enough to make her wonder, so she adds, "I did. I saw a couple having a deep kiss outside." She notices his blood pressure spiking in response, clearly intrigued by what might be on his mind. The nurse steps out to get the doctor, leaving Jeong-hyeok and Se-ri alone in the room. Jeong-hyeok looks at her with a bit of confusion, asking what she's doing. Se-ri looks up from the uniform she's sewing and simply replies, "I'm sewing up the hole in your uniform." After a moment, she lets out a sigh, dropping the uniform and deciding to address the awkwardness between them. With a slight hesitation, she offers him 3 options for how to handle the situation. The first 2 are essentially the same, acting like the kiss never happened, and the third is simply not to worry about it. He immediately jumps at the third option, which doesn't sit well with her. She notices his quick response and, sensing that he might feel pressured, she decides that she doesn't want to make him uncomfortable. Feeling a little frustrated, she leaves to return the sewing kit, placing his uniform gently next to him. As she walks away, Jeong-hyuk's eyes land on the heart she'd sewn onto the uniform, and he can't help but smile at the small, personal touch. In the hallway, Se-ri is greeted by her teammates, who are relieved to see that she's okay. She smiles and leads them inside to see Jeong-hyuk, but when they enter, they find that in the 30 seconds she was gone, he's fallen asleep. Looking at Jeong-hyuk, Jisoo wonders how he got shot when he's supposed to be so agile. Se-ri quickly tries to defend him, but Jisoo remains sure that he wasn't fast enough to dodge the bullet. Unbeknownst to them, Jeong-hyuk, still lying there, slowly clenches his fist in frustration. After a while, Se-ri finally lets the teammates leave. When the coast is clear, she turns to Jeong-hyuk, looking at him with a mix of concern and amusement. "Quit feigning sleep," she says softly. He admits that he was too embarrassed to face the guys, making Se-ri wonder if he really couldn't dodge the bullet. "Of course I didn't dodge it," he replies, his voice serious. "If I had, you would have gotten shot." His words make her heart flutter, but she immediately insists, "I don't want you to dodge anything for me again." Jeong-hyuk, still serious, asks the same of her. "If this were to happen again," he says, "don't stay behind because of me." She nods, understanding the weight of his request. Meanwhile, Seung-joon and Dan are eating together, chatting about how she ended up engaged to Jeong-hyuk. Seung-joon brings up the fact that Jeong-hyuk and Se-ri were at a hotel together, and Dan quickly clears up the misunderstanding. But then Seung-joon presses on, asking, "Has your fiancé even confessed his love to you?" To Seung-joon's question, Dan mutters that they'll be married anyway and continues eating, trying to brush off the topic. Seung-joon, however, isn't letting it go. He tells her that marriage alone won't solve everything, as it's the uncertainty and excitement of a relationship that truly sparks those butterflies. He speaks from experience, sharing that his own arranged marriage failed, and now, he can't stop thinking about that woman. As night falls, Jeong-hyuk encourages Se-ri to use his bed instead of sleeping on the floor. She happily agrees, but her smile fades when she sees him move toward the floor himself. "What do you suggest, then?" he asks, raising an eyebrow. "For us to sleep in the same bed." Se-ri grins and responds, "There's no need for a war if we stay within our boundaries," easing the tension. So, Jeong-hyuk gives Se-ri most of the space, lying down on his side of the bed. A few seconds later, Se-ri, thinking he's already asleep since he hasn't answered, asks if he's awake. When he doesn't respond, she pouts a little, then drifts off to sleep. But Jeong-hyuk, who's been awake the whole time, quietly sits up after a while. He watches Se-ri sleep, her face peaceful. As she turns to her side, a lock of hair falls across her face. Gently, he reaches out and moves it away, his fingers brushing against her skin with a soft tenderness. In the morning, Chul-kang finally tracks down the hospital where Jeong-hyeok is being treated. Without wasting any time, he mobilizes two trucks full of soldiers, heading straight for the location. Meanwhile, Se-ri is outside the hospital, standing by the payphone as she calls Seung-joon. Hearing her voice, he's relieved to know that she's okay and quickly urges her to wait for him. He promises he'll be there soon and will answer all her questions about her family in person. Se-ri hangs up the phone, but as she turns to walk away, she freezes when she sees Chul-kang's trucks pulling up. She quickly hides, watching as he and his men march into the hospital, her heart racing. Inside, Chul-kang storms into Jeong-hyuk's room, holding up the firearm logbook. "I have proof," he declares, confronting Jeong-hyuk. "You shot your men to protect a South Korean spy." Jeong-hyuk doesn't deny what happened. His face remains calm as he looks Chul-kang in the eye. "I wasn't protecting a spy," he says quietly. "I was protecting my woman from people who were trying to hurt her." The words hang in the air, but Jeong-hyuk isn't finished. He leans forward slightly, revealing that he knows something Chul-kang doesn't expect. "I also know, from Colonel Go, that you met with the Chief 3 of the United Front Department to extract information from Division 11 against regulations." The tension in the room thickens, and Chul-kang's expression hardens as the stakes rise. "Would it be okay if I request an investigation?" Jeong-hyuk proposes, his voice steady and calm. He's unflinching, even in the face of Chul-kang's anger. But Chul-kang, who's already frustrated, shoots back, "If you want to run your mouth so much, you can say that after I arrest you." He motions for his first lieutenant, but before anyone can move, the door opens and Director Ri enters. Chul-kang immediately stands at attention and salutes, his expression tightening as he acknowledges his superior. With a single glance from Director Ri, Chul-kang realizes there's no argument to be had. He's forced to leave with his men, empty-handed, his anger simmering but held in check by the presence of the director. In the hallway, the nurses, now whispering among themselves, begin to piece things together. They correctly guess that Jeong-hyuk must be the director's son, and Se-ri, standing nearby, overhears their conversation. The revelation leaves her momentarily stunned, her mind racing as the implications of this new information settle in. Just then, Se-ri hears Dan and her mother's voices approaching. Panicking, she quickly grabs a nearby girl in a wheelchair, pretending to be her caretaker. The girl, confused, asks what she's doing, but Se-ri doesn't hesitate. She quickly uses the fact that the girl had been watching a BTS music video to her advantage, threatening to tell everyone if she doesn't stay quiet. The girl falls silent, and Se-ri breathes a sigh of relief as she hurriedly wheels her away, hoping to avoid being seen. While Director Ri successfully gets Chul-kang out of Jeong-hyuk's room, he's far from done with him. He confronts Chul-kang, demanding to know what's going on and why he's causing so much trouble. Chul-kang tries to explain himself, but Director Ri isn't having it. His wife, hearing the raised voices, protests, urging her husband to stop and leave their son alone. Finally, in a burst of frustration, his wife snaps. "We should be grateful that our only son is alive after being shot," she exclaims, her emotions raw. Her words hang in the air, a sharp reminder of the gravity of the situation. And just at that moment, the door bursts open, and Dan and her mother walk in. Dan's mom immediately checks over Jung-hyuk to make sure he still has all his limbs, her face clouded with concern. She frets about his safety, saying he should quit being a soldier and return to the arts, the career she had hoped he'd pursue instead. "I wanted my daughter to marry you, not your brother, for this very reason," she adds, her voice filled with worry. Dan, clearly embarrassed, yells at her mother to stop, but she quickly turns to Jung-hyuk's parents and apologizes on her behalf, her face flushed with discomfort. Her gaze lands on Jung-hyuk's uniform, and her expression falters when she sees the sewn-on heart. The sight makes her even more distressed, the realization of something unspoken settling in. Outside, Se-ri takes a moment to thank the girl in the wheelchair for helping her out. The girl, introducing herself as Minji, grins as she compliments Se-ri's impressive Seoul accent. They chat for a moment, and Minji asks, "So, who's your bias in BTS?" Minji eagerly shares that her bias is Jungkook, and Se-ri smiles, her eyes lighting up. "Ri Jeong-hyeok," she says softly. "He's my favorite." The words come naturally, as if they were the most obvious answer in the world, and she feels a sense of warmth in saying them out loud. Just as Minji is about to ask more, Seung-joon's car pulls up. Se-ri quickly bids Minji goodbye, climbing into the car with a wave. Minji watches them drive off, still a bit confused but clearly impressed. "She's so cool," Minji murmurs to herself as Se-ri and Seung-joon disappear down the street. Seung-joon's gotten into her head. Once Jung-hyuk's parents leave, Dan and Jung-hyuk are left alone. The first thing Dan brings up is the uniform, her eyes landing on the stitched heart. Jung-hyuk doesn't try to avoid the topic. "Yes," he says, his voice calm. "The stitching was done by the person you're thinking of." There's a pause before he adds, almost reluctantly, "I like that woman." The words hang in the air, and Dan is taken aback. Jung-hyuk continues, his expression serious. "I can't marry you when I have feelings for someone else." Dan's face falls, the shock clear in her eyes. She can't accept it. "You're just getting butterflies because Se-ri is leaving soon," she says, trying to convince herself more than him. She starts to get agitated, blaming their lack of romance on the fact that their marriage was arranged. "If it wasn't for this marriage, maybe things would be different," she mutters, her frustration bubbling to the surface. It seems Seung-joon's words have gotten to her, making her question everything between her and Jung-hyuk. She's confused, angry, and desperate for things to work out, but the reality of Jung-hyuk's feelings weighs heavily between them. Dan, still determined that everything will be fine once Se-ri is out of the picture, has no intention of cancelling their wedding. With a final, resolute look at Jung-hyuk, she walks out of the room and heads back to her mother. As soon as she enters, she tells her mother, "We need to get a wedding dress," her tone leaving no room for argument. Meanwhile, Seung-joon drives Se-ri back to his place, urging her to relax. But Se-ri, unable to shake off her anxiety, is desperate to know if he's had any luck reaching her family in the south. Seung-joon sits her down, trying to calm her nerves, and reassures her that her family was ecstatic to hear she's alive. Se-ri's face falters, doubt crossing her features. "You're lying," she says softly, unable to believe that her brothers, who had always been so distant, would ever react with such happiness. But when Seung-joon casually brings up the paragliding accident, Se-ri's demeanor shifts. Her eyes light up, a spark of hope in them as she thinks, he must have talked to them if he knows about that. Seung-joon continues his reassurance, telling Se-ri that her family even postponed the general shareholder meeting until her return. Se-ri, looking relieved for a moment, begins to relax, but as the scene shifts, we see the truth unfolding, that, in fact, her family is holding that very meeting as they speak, completely ignoring the supposed postponement. Meanwhile, Chairman Yu stands before the press, his face heavy with the weight of the words he has to speak. He clears his throat before addressing the reporters, confirming what they already suspected. Yes, Se-ri was missing, he says, and after a month of unsuccessful searching, we officially registered her death. The room goes silent for a moment, and just like that, the news of Se-ri's death spreads like wildfire. Headlines flash across screens, and the world begins to absorb the shocking news. Chairman Yu, looking as though he despises every second of what he's just said, sinks back in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. The camera cuts to the boardroom, where Se-ri's brothers, alongside their wives, are anxiously waiting for the next announcement. The tension is thick in the air as the shareholders cast their votes. And then, the results are in. Se-hyung has been chosen as the new head of the company. The news is a crushing blow. As the weight of the moment settles in, the stakes of the corporate power struggle become even clearer. Dan and her mom, eager to move forward with the wedding, sneak off to a secret wedding shop, far from the public eye. The shopkeeper, a kind woman, reveals she just returned from Shanghai and shows them the latest wedding fashion magazine she picked up during her trip. As Dan flips through the pages, her eyes land on a news article that makes her heart stop, a picture of Se-ri, the South Korean heiress, with the headline, "Declared Missing." Dan's heart races as the realization hits her. Se-ri's disappearance, and everything that has been happening, rushes through her mind. Without saying a word, she hurries out of the store, the magazine clutched tightly in her hand, her thoughts spinning. Meanwhile, Jeong-hyeok is growing more and more frantic as he searches for Se-ri. He approaches the hospital staff, asking to view the security footage. The staff, now recognizing him as Director Ri's son, are more than happy to oblige. The footage shows Se-ri rushing into a car, and although the driver's face is obscured, Jeong-hyeok quickly jots down the license plate number, determined to track it down and find her. Se-ri, unaware of Jeong-hyeok's concern, wakes up in Seung-joon's bed. She had apparently fallen asleep before she could call him. Sitting up, she rubs her eyes, trying to shake off the grogginess. As she gets up, she finds Seung-joon setting the table for dinner, his demeanor strangely distant. Noticing the change in his mood, Se-ri asks if she can borrow his phone to call Jeong-hyeok. But Seung-joon's face remains eerily detached as he responds, "You don't need him anymore. You have me." His words hang in the air, the unspoken tension between them thickening, and Se-ri is left speechless, unsure of what to make of his statement. Seung-joon steps closer to Se-ri, his tone calm but persuasive. He tries to convince her that staying with him is the safest option, that with his help, she'll have a better chance of escaping the mess she's in. If Jeong-hyeok keeps helping you, he warns, he'll only get deeper into trouble. He can't even leave his own country. Se-ri listens, her mind racing, but Seung-joon doesn't stop there. He knows how to push her buttons, and with a calculated step forward, he delivers the final blow, "He could die because of you." The words hit Se-ri like a punch to the gut. Her eyes widen in shock, and the weight of his statement sinks in, leaving her momentarily speechless. Seung-joon stands there, watching her, knowing that the seeds of doubt have been planted. Meanwhile, Jung-hyuk is determined to find Se-ri. He's on his way out of the hospital, ready to track her down, when he is stopped by Dan in the hall. She holds up the news article, her eyes searching his for answers. "Can you explain yourself?" she asks, her voice tinged with frustration. "Did you know the woman you liked was from the south?" Jung-hyuk freezes, the question catching him off guard. His mind races as he tries to find the right words to explain everything, but Dan's expression tells him she already has her suspicions. The tension between them grows, and Jung-hyuk knows he's about to face the fallout from his secret. Without hesitation, Jung-hyuk answers, "Yes." Dan is stunned. "You knew she was from the south, and you're still helping her?" she asks, disbelief in her voice. She warns him, "If you get caught, you could lose everything, your life included." Dan looks at him, searching for any sign of doubt, then asks, "Even so, you still like her?" Jung-hyuk doesn't answer. He just looks at her, his expression determined. Additional scene. Se-ri is out on a date with her former boyfriend. As she notices a piano, something triggers a memory, and she asks him if he can name a certain song, since he once majored in classical music. She plays what she can remember, and it's clearly the chorus from Jung-hyuk's song. She's disappointed when her boyfriend can't recognize it, especially since she's been longing to hear it again. When he asks why, she explains, "When I was in Switzerland, I didn't want to live. I didn't exactly want to die, but I felt I needed some consolation." She continues, "I wanted to hear someone say that I could live, that I must keep on living." Her voice softens as she recalls, "While riding a boat out on the water, I heard the song playing in the distance, coming like an answer to my prayers. But to my dismay, I was too far away to see the player's face.